We literally don't know very much about the ocean. We only have mapped something like 20% of it. We've only seen something like 1 or 2% of it. There could be things hiding out here that we've never seen before.
The Megalodon is said to be extinct, or at least that's what we've been told. Yet, with each passing year, sightings of massive sharks leave us questioning whether this prehistoric predator is truly gone. From a 30-foot massive shark passing by a fishing boat to a recent Megalodon sighting off the coast of Australia, here are some terrifying shark encounters that might just be Megalodon. Number 20. Deep Blue, the Great White. Most great white sharks measure between 11 and 15 feet long. That's just long enough if you ask me. But that's just an average, and some can be much larger. So large, in fact, you might just think they're a megalodon or at least half a megalodon. Let's look at Deep Blue as an example. She's approximately 20 feet long and is believed to still be growing even at more than 50 years old. Scientists think she is among the biggest great whites ever caught on camera. Some incredible footage of Deep Blue has been captured over time, such as that by conservationist Mauricio Hoyos Padilla in 2013. He was working for Discovery's Shark Week when they took amazing footage near Guadalupe Island in Mexico. The video footage showed Deep Blue swimming up to the dive cage housing the crew, having a nosy around, and then disappearing back into the dark depths of the ocean. Researchers have been able to tag Deep Blue to gather data like depth and location. The goal of tagging sharks like Deep Blue is to help us understand their movements and behaviors. Otherwise, how are we supposed to update our wiki articles with cool facts? Number 19. The Maltese Shark. One of the largest great white sharks in history was captured by complete accident in Malta in 1987. Alfredo Cutajar, a fisherman from a village called Weed is Zuriek, was fishing for tuna and swordfish. He wasn't having much luck but boarded his 16.4-foot boat at 4:30 a.m. one morning in April and decided to check his hooks and collect his bait. As he checked them, he discovered something heavy on one and signaled to a fishing boat nearby to help him bring it in. It was much longer than his own fishing boat and took 3 hours to bring back to the village. It was taken to a nearby village to have all of its measurements taken, and another fisherman started cutting it open. An intact 6.5-meter blue shark, an 8-foot dolphin in 2 pieces, and a turtle all came out. It was reported that the shark was measured twice from the point of the snout to the upper lobe of the tail, and it measured 7 meters and 14 centimeters, or 22.96 feet and 5.51 inches. However, when Alfredo was interviewed for the documentary Jaws in the Mediterranean, he said the shark was 7.01 meters or 23 feet, after previously saying it was 23.7 feet long. He then went back to his original story in 2001, saying it was 23 feet and weighed over 6,300 pounds. As it was such a long time ago and so many people were involved in its capture and measurements, it's hard to know just how accurate the story is or how large the shark truly was. Number 18. Vimy, the 13-foot great white. Seeing a 13-foot great white would be enough to make your blood run cold, but noticing bite wounds from something even larger gives you a real insight into how much we just don't know about the ocean. A megalodon might have created that bite wound, and we'd be none the wiser. The 13-foot great white shark that researchers called Vimy was caught off Nova Scotia's coast, and the bloody wound and incredible body scarring were immediately evident. OCARCH, the US-based research organization that caught the shark, said that even though Vimy was one of the largest sharks they had ever caught, whatever attacked him must have been at least 14 feet, if not longer. The OCARCH founding chairman, Chris Fisher, said something would have grabbed his entire head, and it was possibly a male shark fighting over a mate or a female who didn't want to mate. Shark mating is quite violent, so bite marks to the head are actually not that uncommon. Surprisingly, as giant as Vimy is, he isn't the largest they've seen. They also spotted an almost 17-foot great white, but it escaped before they were able to tag it. Number 17. 30-foot shark passes by fishing boat. Imagine being on a 23-foot fishing boat and seeing the shadow of a shark so large that it's longer than the boat by several feet. You'd be quivering in your flippers. Coastal Carolina business student Jack Spear, who was aboard the boat, said the shark was so big, they didn't even think it was a shark. They thought it might have been a buoy, but when they got closer, they saw a fin. While he might have assumed it was a great white shark and started to feel a little nervous, they quickly realized it was a much more harmless basking shark. According to Jack, it was easily 5 feet longer than the boat and not shy at all. It was swimming laps of the boat and didn't seem to be too worried about them being there. Even though the shark was absolutely enormous, Jack said that they weren't worried. He stated that basking sharks don't even eat other fish, so he wasn't nervous. Although it might have been a different story had that been a 30-foot-long great white shark. Number 16. 17-foot great white shark. A massive 17-foot great white shark caught back in 1983 attracted a lot of attention even all those years ago. But as we learn more about sharks, it's actually come back into the spotlight. We now know that it is one of the two largest measured sharks in the world. The giant shark was caught by an Albertan fisherman, David McKendrick, off the western side of Prince Edward Island. It had gotten caught in his net and was dead by the time he pulled it to the surface. By the looks of it, I'm surprised it didn't sink the boat. According to the Canadian Shark Research Laboratory based in Bedford, Nova Scotia, it is definitely in the top 2 for the largest ever measured sharks. But perhaps even more surprising is that if the shark had lived, it likely would have grown much, much larger. New studies of its bones and those of other sharks revealed that sharks grow slowly and mature much later than we thought. So, it was likely still young, around age 20, when it died. Great white sharks can live for around 70 years, meaning it still had so much growing to do. This news is actually not great for shark populations. Their numbers are dwindling, and their late age of maturity means the recovery rate may also be much slower. Now it's time for today's topic. In the early morning hours of July 2024, off the rugged coast of Australia, a group of seasoned fishermen set out on what they thought would be an ordinary day at sea. The crew, veterans with decades of experience, had weathered storms and tangled with countless ocean predators, but nothing could have prepared them for what lay ahead. As the sun climbed above the horizon, casting a golden shimmer on the waves, their nets suddenly went taut. The boat groaned under the strain, and the crew scrambled to secure the catch. But before they could reel it in, a violent jolt nearly capsized the vessel. What happened next left the men paralyzed with fear. Rising from the depths was a monstrous shark, its massive body gleaming ghostly white in the sunlight. Its dorsal fin alone dwarfed the boat, and as it swam closer, its sheer size became undeniable. This was no great white. The beast, estimated at over 90 feet, effortlessly tore through their loaded net in one ferocious bite, scattering debris and fish across the waves. Its jaws, lined with rows of teeth the size of machetes, snapped shut with a thunderous clap. The shark lingered momentarily, circling the vessel as if inspecting its prey. Then, with a flick of its enormous tail, it vanished into the depths, leaving the crew in stunned silence. When they returned to shore, the men refused to set sail again, their trembling voices recounting an encounter they swore was with the legendary Megalodon. Number 15. / the 16.4-foot great white shark. We're often told that great white sharks don't intentionally seek out humans to attack. They just take a sample nibble, and that, unfortunately, can be life-threatening. Although if we're talking about / the 16.4-foot great white shark, you can nearly guarantee he bites humans for the fun of it. / is a huge shark that roams New Zealand waters and is described as one of the most aggressive great white sharks that Shark Dive NZ owner Peter Scott has ever encountered. He got his name, / from the massive gash on the side of his mouth, which was caused by a botched tagging attempt by the Department of Conservation and the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research. Peter believes this tagging fail changed his attitude, and he became quite aggressive. Can you blame him? I'd be miffed if someone tagged my face and stuffed it up as well. Because of his major attitude and resultant gash, / was called a local legend and also became the poster boy for Discovery Channel's Shark Week. He featured in one episode filmed off the coast of Stewart Island in New Zealand, which has some of the world's largest and most aggressive great white sharks. Number 14. Deep sea shark checking out submarine. There are plenty of sea creatures that we know exist, but that's as far as it goes. We often don't know anything about how they live, how they spend their days, or their habits. Thanks to the incredible efforts of marine biologists from OceanX in a Submarine, we may now learn a little bit more about blunt-nosed six-gill sharks. The research team spent 4 days and used 300 pounds of bait trying to tag one of these sharks. Not only did they finally accomplish their goal and make history by being the first group to tag an animal from a submarine, but they had incredible experiences along the way. For example, they found several blunt-nosed six-gill sharks measuring up to 16 feet long, and a large female seemed to be intrigued by the submersible vehicle. They managed to film the entire interaction. This interesting shark species is poorly understood and lives at depths of up to 3,300 feet. However, they've also been recorded swimming as deep as 5,000 feet below the ocean surface. They date back about 180 million years, and that's about as much as we know. Hopefully, this tagging allows us to learn a little bit more about what they get up to. Number 13. 100-foot Megalodon Washes ashore. I'm not too fond of the internet sometimes. There's so much false information that anytime you come across something that might be legitimate, you have to question whether someone's gone to great lengths just to make it look real. This might be one of those situations. A news article was published on April Fool's Day in 2016 but appeared on YouTube in August 3 years prior, showing what appeared to be a 100-foot-long recently deceased megalodon on a beach in South Africa. The footage was apparently from the Coast Guard, captured from a helicopter circling overhead. It showed 2 large dump trucks positioned in front of a clearly huge shark, and all signs point to it being the megalodon that we thought and know is extinct. But the article is still super convincing. It describes the footage being taken by Lieutenant Commander Joe Cleese of the South African Coast Guard, with comments from Dr. Robert Chatilian, who has a PhD. Dr. Chatilian said that if it's confirmed, it would be one of the most significant discoveries in recent history and a more extraordinary find than prehistoric dinosaurs. But if you search Lieutenant Cleese's name or even Dr. Chatilian's, there's simply no information about them other than what's in the story. Is it real or is it fake? Let us know what you think. Number 12. Google Earth reveals Megalodon. We've made many discoveries through flight and satellites, so it's probably not all that surprising that maybe in the future, we can confirm that Megalodon sharks are not extinct. Instead, one or two might be lurking in the Persian Gulf. Researchers were reviewing satellite imagery from Google Earth and saw what they believed was a massive shark measuring around 70 feet long. While there hasn't been any confirmation or extra information about what that shark was, there's every reason to believe it might just be the big-toothed Megalodon. They can grow up to 67 feet, so 70 feet isn't really out of the question, and they would look quite like great white sharks in the water. That's because they are their close relatives. It's also not absurd to find them in the Persian Gulf, since fossils have been found all around the world and bordering most oceans. The Persian Gulf is a Mediterranean Sea in Western Asia that's essentially an extension of the Indian Ocean between the Arabian Peninsula and Iran. As there's nowhere that a megalodon wouldn't be found, finding one here would make perfect sense. Number 11. Swimming with a great white shark. How would you feel if a great white shark came up next to you? Most people would be absolutely terrified, but marine biologist Ocean Ramsey described her experience as filling her heart with joy and taking her breath away. Ocean has been studying these huge sharks for over a decade, but her swimming encounter with one thought to measure about 20 feet long was purely accidental. She and her team had been studying tiger sharks off the coast of Oahu when the 20-foot-long, 8-foot-wide shark, weighing over 2 tons, ended up swimming beside her. Most people would have feared for their life, but Ocean said she was fortunate enough to be graced with the presence of the female shark. She thinks it was most likely the world-famous deep blue, but she was waiting for experts to confirm. She also believed the shark was pregnant. Ocean was happy to share her experiences with the world and hoped her encounter with this great white shark would inspire people to protect sharks. She said it's sad that people think they're monsters and want to kill them due to watching movies like Jaws. Number 10. 550-pound shark. Not all massive sharks are great white sharks. When 7 fishermen captured a huge 550-pound shark, it sure did look like a great white based on its size, but it was actually a porbeagle. Porbeagles are mackerel sharks, just like the Megalodon was, but they live in cold and temperate marine waters. They also have an average weight of 298 pounds, but this one was clearly living life to the fullest to tip the scales at 550 pounds. Simon Davidson hooked the shark just 7 miles from the Devon coast and fought to reel it in for an hour. He describes having a battered body after trying to bring it on board. The boat he and 6 others wrestled to secure the shark to their boat so they could measure it. It was almost 7 feet long, 6 feet in circumference, and weighed an estimated 550 pounds. If that's true, it would be the biggest ever porbeagle caught in British waters. Simon was a freshwater angler but liked the idea of big game fishing. He had heard that the North Devon coast was an excellent location for porbeagles, so he hired a boat and spent 2 days fishing. When he caught the porbeagle, it took nearly 2,000 feet of line as it took off through the water before he was finally able to bring it back. After measuring it, he unhooked it and let it go. Number 9. Fisherman has close encounter. 2020 was a challenging year for many people, but it was also the year that Australian fisherman Matthew Smith thought he was going to die. He was out fishing on his kayak about a mile from New South Wales' Blackhead Beach on Australia's east coast when he saw a 13-foot great white shark looking at him as it glided past. The entire experience was caught on a drone camera operated by his friend Nick O'Brien, but the whole time Matthew wondered whether that day was his last on Earth, before he was about to become fish food. Nick had to watch the situation unfold from a screen, and he was too far away to do anything. He just had to hope that the shark heading for the bright green boat wasn't going to cause any trouble for Matthew. The shark showed interest in his sea anchor, so he quickly dumped it into the ocean. Fortunately for Matthew, the shark may have been put off by the noise of the drone, and it didn't take a bite of him or his kayak. Matthew said he would continue fishing even after his experience but planned to take a bigger boat. Matthew was incredibly lucky, but his fears of death weren't unfounded. According to conservationists, more people were killed in shark attacks in 2020 than in any year since 1934. Number 8. Monster tiger shark in Sydney. You might be impressed by the 3-pounder salmon that you caught all by yourself, but a group of fishermen in Sydney, Australia, deserve the bragging rights for their haul way more. Captain Paul Barney and his crew aboard the Dark Horse fishing boat were fishing off the coast of Sydney when they managed to hook a large tiger shark. And by large, I truly mean large. It weighed 394.5 kilograms, or 869.7 pounds, and was so big that its head dangled off the edge of the boat as they made their way back to shore with it. It took about 45 minutes for them to reel it in, and they eventually manhandled it onto their boat to take it to be weighed at port hacking. That was when its incredible weight was realized. Tiger sharks are not listed as endangered, but they are listed as near threatened, so the fisherman did cop a lot of criticism online. In New South Wales, you're only allowed one tiger shark catch daily. Because of the criticism of the sport, many game fishers who do bring in quite incredible catches don't like to share them on the internet. They're worried about receiving the same level of criticism. Tiger sharks are requiem sharks that can grow over 16 feet long. They are massive macropredators that live in tropical and temperate waters and are solitary, nocturnal hunters. They are second next to great white sharks for the highest number of fatal attacks on humans, but it actually seems like they should be more afraid of us. Humans are one of their biggest threats due to fishing and finning. Number 7. 12-foot great white shark. Great white shark populations could be in danger, so capturing any we find and tagging them to gather data can actually be quite important. Chip Michalove is no stranger to capturing great whites, but he had quite the experience trying to catch and tag one measuring a whopping 12 feet long. The charter fisherman, who owns Outcast Sport Fishing, usually sees at least 10 great whites over the winter, but he had to try 4 different locations on one of his latest trips to find the 12-foot beast. He managed to catch, tag, and release it off Hilton Head Island, and scientists in Massachusetts will keep an eye on the data to track its movement. The shark was particularly feisty, dragging the boat for almost 30 minutes before it could be brought under control. Chip described the process as a battle of endurance, with the shark putting up an incredible fight that left both him and his crew exhausted. Witnesses on the charter said they were in awe of the shark's power, noting how the rod bent nearly double during the struggle. One passenger even managed to capture a few seconds of the dramatic encounter on video, which quickly went viral online. Chip later remarked that despite the intensity of the experience, this was one of the most rewarding catches of his career. He and one other person had to work quickly and carefully to get the shark back to the side of the boat. It turned out to be a 12-foot female, and they placed pop-up and acoustic tags on her before carefully releasing her. Number 6. Giant shark sparks Megalodon theory. Cruise ship trips can be pretty exciting as you get to make your way to new places and enjoy on-ship entertainment. But the cruise operators were not in control of the entertainment many of the guests got in 2021. Many of them were screaming and shouting as they watched a massive shark circling the waters around their ship. Musician Alex Albrecht filmed the encounter and uploaded the video to his TikTok account, which obtained tens of millions of views. It showed the shark swimming in a circle near the water's surface and tourists rushing to the very edges of the ship to get a closer look. One brave passenger even attempted to throw a piece of food into the water, hoping to see the shark react, but was quickly stopped by the ship's staff. Others could be heard speculating whether it was safe for the ship to remain stationary with such a large creature nearby. The atmosphere was a mix of fear and excitement, with some parents hurriedly pulling their children back from the edge, while others tried to capture the moment on their phones. Some passengers claimed to have felt the ship subtly shift as the massive shark moved beneath it, adding to the drama. Honestly, if it were me and there was an unknown shark in the water, I would not be getting as close to the edge as they were. Some people were convinced the shark was so large that it was a megalodon. However, it was a much more innocent species. Experts later identified the shark as a basking shark. They can grow up to about 39 or 40 feet and weigh as much as 6 tons. Basking sharks are the second largest living sharks, but they are harmless to humans and not aggressive. That's a relief. Number 5. Great white shark leaps at seal. When you see pictures taken by the award-winning New Zealand photographer Chris McLennan, there's probably no doubt in your mind why most of us are scared of great whites. Not only are they absolutely massive, but just look at how they leap out of the water to feast on poor, defenseless seals. Chris traveled to Seal Island off the coast of South Africa's Cape Town to witness shark breaches and take photos of them. The shark-infested waters around Seal Island are one of the only places known in the world where sharks actually breach the water surface to hunt prey, normally Cape fur seals. He noted how the sheer power of these predators is awe-inspiring, as they use their muscular tails to propel themselves out of the water with incredible force. Observing the shark's precision and speed, Chris remarked that these breaches often happen in a fraction of a second, leaving no room for the seals to react. In some instances, the seals would perform acrobatic maneuvers in midair to try and escape, but these efforts were rarely successful. Chris said that anyone who's photographed wildlife before would know that this type of behavior is rare to witness and hard to capture in photos. While he had to use a decoy seal towed by a boat when nothing was happening, he still managed to capture the great whites doing what they do best, eating other animals. He took photos of over 24 shark breaches in just 1 hour, and the images he captured were absolutely breathtaking. The sharks were huge, and they managed to leap great heights into the air to grab lone seals that had been separated from their groups. Number 4. Shark feasting on a whale. By now, you're probably quite familiar with Deep Blue, the approximately 20-foot-long great white shark tagged by researchers. Well, Deep Blue appeared in the news again more than 20 years after that event. The shark, weighing around 2.5 tons, was seen near the Hawaiian island of Oahu eating a dead sperm whale. Tiger sharks had stumbled across the feast first, but Deep Blue wasn't about to miss out. Kimberly Jeffries and Mark Moeller clearly had no fear because they chose to swim alongside the massive shark and record its dinner time. During the interaction, they noted Deep Blue's surprisingly calm and curious demeanor, which contrasted sharply with the typical image of aggressive great whites. Kimberly described how the massive predator seemed unbothered by their presence, gracefully circling the whale carcass while keeping a watchful eye on the divers. The team also documented the complex interactions between Deep Blue and the tiger sharks, observing how the smaller sharks deferred to the great white's dominance over the feeding site. Kimberly shared the videos and photos online and described waiting quietly and patiently while observing Deep Blue swimming up to the sperm whale carcass. Kimberly also wrote on her Instagram page about how the shark swam so closely to her that she had to put out her hand to maintain space for the shark's girth to pass. Kimberly and other activists have requested a bill to be reintroduced into the Hawaiian legislature that would make it illegal to kill sharks and stingrays. Often, they're killed for their fins, which are considered a delicacy. Number 3. Great white shark caught in Mexico. When you go out fishing on a boat, you generally take a few pieces of safety equipment like a life ring and a life jacket. But if you think about it, how effective would these be against a great white shark? Probably not at all. Fortunately for fishermen in Mexico, the great white shark that could have quite easily overpowered their boat and taken their lives was dead. They had been fishing in the Sea of Cortez off Sonora State when a massive 2,000-pound, 20-foot great white shark became caught up in their nets. Unfortunately, it died. However, that was good news for the men, who believed that it would have quickly taken over their small boat had it been alive. When the fishermen hauled the giant shark to shore, it became a local spectacle, drawing crowds eager to see such a massive predator up close. The shark's size was so intimidating that even in death, it evoked a mix of awe and fear among onlookers. Sadly, great white shark numbers have been declining since the 1970s. The sight of the dead shark also sparked conversations about the dangers of bycatch, as large fishing nets inadvertently trap not just targeted species but also vulnerable marine life. We don't know the global population numbers, but they are considered vulnerable. Fishing businesses often target them for their fins, teeth, and jaws, and they're enjoyed in sport fishing. Most oceanic sharks and rays have declined by at least 70% since the 1970s, with the leading cause being overfishing. While not all fishermen intend for sharks to get caught in their nets, it's a sad consequence of using nets large enough for them to get trapped. Number 2. The Kangaroo Island great white shark. Some of the largest great white sharks in the world have been around 18 feet long, but experts believe it's not impossible for there to be even larger specimens out there in the vast open ocean. An example of a larger shark might be one caught near Kangaroo Island in Australia in 1987. It was believed to be over 7 meters, or nearly 23 feet, long, but scientists have long questioned these claims. The shark's size estimation methods suggested that it was more likely to be 19 to 21 feet long, but the photographic evidence tended to lean more towards the shark being even larger than that. Witnesses who saw the shark described its sheer presence as jaw-dropping, with one fisherman recalling that the shark's head alone seemed bigger than a small car. Scientists wanted to put this size issue to bed once and for all, so they conducted a comprehensive morphometric analysis of the shark's remains and re-examined the photo evidence. The analysis involved comparing the shark's proportions to other verified specimens, using modern imaging software to fine-tune the size estimates. They also consulted first-hand accounts from experienced fishermen who had interacted with large sharks before, further strengthening the credibility of the claims. Their goal was to validate the original size estimates. Their findings were consistent, and they determined that the original estimates of about 23 feet couldn't have been ruled out. Honestly, does it really matter? Let's face it, a 19-foot shark is just as capable of killing you as a 23-foot shark. Number 1. The Marino Bay, Australia shark. How many sharks would take kindly to you approaching them with a tape measure and asking them to stay still while you took measurements and notes? Yeah, not many. So, when people say they photographed what might be the largest ever great white shark, you have to take that claim with a grain of salt. We just can't know for sure unless the shark is captured and safely restrained. An Australian crew with a non-profit organization said they spotted a large great white shark about 300 feet from the shores of Marino Bay in South Australia. They said it was approximately 23 feet long and deduced this by using their 20-foot jet boat for comparison. The shark was bigger, they said. Witnesses reported that the shark's dorsal fin alone appeared to be taller than most of the crew members, adding to their amazement. The shark's massive size and girth left an impression, with one crew member describing it as like looking at a submarine with teeth. While some skeptics debated the accuracy of the sighting, the sheer number of witnesses who saw it adds weight to the claim. The crew noted the shark seemed completely unfazed by their presence, gliding effortlessly past their boat without any sign of aggression. James Cook University marine science professor Colin Simpfendorfer said judging size from photos is always challenging. You can get a sense of size, but measuring with accuracy when there are very few size references in a photo does make it difficult. According to a comment on the Shark Alert South Australia Facebook page, the crew are professionals, so there are no lies about the length. They said that, as stated, it is the biggest they've ever seen. Scientists claim the Megalodon shark is extinct, but I'm not so sure, are you? There have been some outrageous shark sightings in recent years, and not all of them align with the size and characteristics of known shark species. So what do you think? Could Megalodon sharks still be lurking in our waters? Let me know, and don't forget to check out the other cool videos on the screen. See you next time.